background noise.
Yeah, so
Anybody else hearing that?
it's
I
coming.
think we're about to start. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for staying with us for our caregiver panel. I am so pleased to be joining you all today as the moderator for our caregiver panel. We have a wonderful panel of caregivers today that are willing to share their experiences as caregivers. These are experiences of successes and challenges in hopes of encouraging you. They will introduce themselves, share an experience or a strategy that has been important in their journey. Then we will take as many questions from you all as possible. So please remember to submit a question, please use our chat feature. We really want this to be an interactive session as possible. So please don't be shy about sending in your questions. And we may combine similar questions. So we thank you in advance for understanding. So let's go ahead and get started because we have a half hour. I'm going to pass to Ginny, and I'm going to ask you to uh, to to kick us off and give us some background on you.
Alrighty. Well, my name is Ginny Demers. I'm from Manchester, New Hampshire, and I'm the wife and caregiver for my spouse, Roger, who was diagnosed with ALS in October of 2015. In April of 2014, Roger began losing his balance and falling for no reason. He also developed a drop foot so that walking became difficult without the use of a cane to help maintain his balance. Step by step, through the last 6 years, he's had to move up from a walker to a scooter to a power wheelchair. Although he's been unusually slow at his progression of this disease, currently it's difficult to utilize his hands. His voice is becoming much weaker, and swallowing can be difficult at times. Perhaps this information will help you to compare or contrast Roger's journey with your own experiences to help you as you move through your journey with your loved ones. I'd like to share with you that it has certainly been an enormous challenge for both of us. However, throughout our struggles, we've learned it's the little things that make the biggest differences. Little things can mean simply obtaining small helpful items like a bendable fork or spoon, a scoop dish, a bottom pocketed bib, a spill-proof drinking glass, all of which will help your loved one feel more independent during his or her day. However, the little things can also refer to things you do to take care of yourself as a caregiver. Therefore, scheduling time is very important. My scheduled little things can include going for a walk, even if it's just around the block, reading my favorite book, listening to music, or watching a funny movie, or just spending a few minutes throughout my day meditating or praying. Taking this time makes a huge difference. These little things help to re energize you both physically and psychologically, leaving you feeling stronger as you move through your day, caring for your loved one. So, in closing, the message I would relay to you is taking care of yourself will ensure that both you and your loved one will have the opportunity to remain in a good space throughout your journey together. So, remember to always take time for your little things. Now, I'll turn it over to Carol.
Thanks, Ginny. I'm Carol Allen, and I live in Harrisburg, Vermont. My husband Dave was diagnosed with ALS in November of 2012 after about a year of testing and treatment. He quickly lost his balance and ability to walk as the ALS affected his core first. He faced each challenge as it came at us with a can-do attitude, and while it wasn't easy, he was determined to live the best life he could during every phase. We had a wonderful support system of family and friends. At least that's what our standard answer was to that question when we were asked, do you have any support? Only after Dave's journey ended in August of 2016 did I start thinking about the fact that I didn't really have the support I needed, and wondered if maybe he felt the same way. We were always together, so I never had the opportunity to voice my feelings or needs because I was always protecting everyone else from the reality that we were in. And I know he tried to protect me as well. So as great as our family and friends were, they just had no idea what we were going through. There's no way that someone else can understand it if they haven't been through it themselves. So the few times I did try to express my feelings, I just got frustrated and decided not to anymore. I did think of lots of times about, well, maybe I should try counseling. Maybe that would help. Maybe there would be someone who could listen and give me some comfort. And, you know, as usual, I would be, oh, I don't have time. I'm working full time. It would just be one more appointment to manage. I'm juggling caregivers, taking care of my husband. So I just discounted it at every time it came to my mind. But I did finally reach out to a counselor after my husband passed, and I wish I'd done it sooner. I think it would have been invaluable to Dave and I, because I would have been a better caregiver because I was getting what I needed. Fortunately, Dave did talk to his palliative care nurse, and that was his time alone with another person who understood what was going on. So I would just like to encourage everyone to find out what you need for support. Identify it, that's the first big thing. And then seek it out. Make sure that you are getting what you need. I know people say take care of yourself. You need more specifics than that. So identify what you need and get it. And now I'd like to turn it over to Porter.
Great. Thanks, Carol. I live in Bristol, Vermont, and my husband, Dave, was diagnosed in October of 2018. He had been losing his ability to speak for over a year. It took us a really long time to get the diagnosis. He was fully ambulatory for quite a while. So as things progressed, he did fully lose his speech and his ability to swallow and eat. He had a peg tube put in the following year, and was still pretty active right up until the spring of 2020. And then his physical abilities waned pretty quickly. And he passed away this June. So I guess one of the things that that I wanted to share is that I know we all have different experiences with the way that ALS sort of like plateaus sometimes when you experience losses. And I felt that in the beginning we were doing a really good job kind of staying ahead of it by being kind of planful and anticipating our needs. And for example, we planned to renovate the downstairs so that we would have a fully accessible bathroom and a bedroom downstairs, well before he lost any of his physical abilities. But even just in like the 6 months that it took from finding a contractor to starting the construction to finishing it, I felt like we were on a downhill toboggan scrambling to, get that done in time to meet his needs. And so I guess the thing that I wanted to share was just to keep looking ahead. And it can be really hard to have those conversations yourself and with your loved one, because they're hard conversations to have about what you're going to need. And sometimes it feels like, if things are not progressing very quickly yet in certain areas, that maybe you won't need to think about the accessible renovations or the nutrition needs or ventilation needs. But they're really important conversations to have. And I feel like I'm glad that we really did have them, even though he sometimes didn't want to, because it made it possible for us to keep him home the way he wanted to, and to have our home be able to support what we wanted to get done. So that's what I would say is, be brave to look forward and try to stay ahead of it and advocate for what you need. And I will say that the palliative care doctor was my favorite person through the whole process. Dave didn't love to talk to her. He wasn't always eager to have those conversations, but I met with her separately sometimes when he didn't feel like talking to her. And she was, for me, even better than a counselor, because she really understood, where I was and could help normalize for me the experiences I was having and that Dave was going through. So.
Thank you, Porter, Carol, Ginny. I will share with all of you that we had also hoped that Larry Libby was going to be able to join us. So Larry is a caregiver to his wife. And unfortunately, he had technical issues and was not able to join us. So it's going to be just the four of us. So, you know, there's so many things that I want to ask about. And in my experiences over the last 6.5 years, I've often thought about what's overwhelming to me is at the early stages. So you go to the doctor's office and the doctor gives that diagnosis that you don't want at all. How do you move forward, and what are the things that you wish looking back that you did differently? I'll start with you, Ginnie. You're muted.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, while you were asking the question, I was trying to think back, and that's a tough question, Maurette, because really, I mean, I didn't know the first thing about this disease whatsoever. Never would I have guessed he would have had that. Nobody in the family has anything like this. So I got a pamphlet. The doctor gave us a pamphlet, and I read it on the way home. I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, this is the end of the world. Well, I hooked up with ALS pretty darn quick and started going to the support groups, and the incredible knowledge that shared in that room. I mean, I was taking notes about everything that was coming out in conversation. And I would just be, he's like, oh, stop, I won't need that right now. Porter, you mentioned something like you don't want to deal with that right now. But basically, I just kept doing the research based on the information I was gathering from the other people who had family members with ALS. And just try to, like you said, Porter, refer, you know, and look ahead, always looking ahead. And it's just been like that for the last 6 years. Really, I'm still looking ahead.
Yeah.
Just to be prepared and to know what's out there.
Thank you, Ginnie. What about you, Carol? What if you could turn back the clock, what would you have done differently? You've already mentioned one thing, that is to reach out for counseling. But are there other things that you would have done differently in those early days?
So at first I was trying to absorb everything I could, and I had to put the brakes on and just focus and kind of take it in steps. And there's something I wish I had done differently. I think it was just take it in steps.
Yeah.
You do need to plan ahead, but yet at the same time, you need to take it in chunks because it's too much to take all at once.
Yeah, totally. I can totally understand that. You know, Ginnie, you as well as, or maybe it was Carol and Porter, have talked about palliative care. How soon did you start asking for referrals? Porter, I'll start with you.
I wasn't familiar with palliative care at all, and it was one of our clinic visits that the Vermont clinic had a palliative care doctor as part of the team who spoke with us. And she actually at the time answered some questions we had. We were trying to find an attorney to talk to us about some sort of, getting some paperwork in order. And so she gave us a lead in that direction. But the palliative care doctor we ended up working with was somebody who was more local, because clinic is a fair distance from us. And there was a palliative care doctor who was associated with the home health care agency that we were using for home care when we got to that point with Dave. And she was also, because we're in a small town, sort of a friend of a friend knew her, but she does so that's how I got connected with that particular palliative care person. But it was clinic that first introduced me to the idea.
And what about you, Carol?
So clinic, I think we never worked with a palliative care doctor, but there was a palliative care nurse as part of the clinical team. And that's, I think, where we got started. Then eventually through the home health organization he had one visiting him here at home. So.
Great. Thank you. We do have a question in the chat, and that is, any tips or tools for communicating effectively among various caregivers? For example, primary, close friends, family. Any suggestions? Ginny, I'll start with you. You're on mute.
Okay.
There you go.
I think it's true of anyone that has been diagnosed with a disease that you reach out to, at least I'd like to think they think that way, reach out to the agency or foundation that kind of deals with those illnesses. So I think that the hottest tip I could ever give anyone, and it results in tools, is to reach out to, like I said, the ALS Foundation. You guys have been incredible in I know that if I get stumped or I think he needs something and I'm not familiar with how to get it or even what it's called formally, I can just reach out to Amber and she's going to give me what I need to know to move forward. So my hot tip is, if you have ALS, get involved with the ALS Foundation, and the tools will fall into your lap.
Thank you, Ginny. So Porter, you talked about this a little bit, and I love your message of just say yes. And even if you don't know what you need, just say yes. Do you have any additional comments that you want to mention regarding this question?
Well, I didn't use any. I think that the question, any tips or tools for communicating among various caregivers. There are sort of websites or care nets and things like that. We didn't take advantage of any of those. For me, the full-time job of just managing all of the care, calls with insurance companies and appointments and ordering nutrition and all of that. I mean, I just honestly, I don't know how people do it. Our kids are grown, and I was like, I have a college degree and I'm a professional, and this is so overwhelming. There was just so much to do. So to set up a way to communicate with people seemed harder than to just do it. So we had a number of circles of friends, sort of family, neighbors, a couple other sort of groups we're connected with. And I did resort to using group emails to those groups. And I also told people, tell anybody anything. Like, I didn't want people to feel like they didn't want to say things that if it wasn't their story to tell. I was like, we're letting it all hang out. Tell, if somebody says like, how are the Knights doing? Like, tell them anything you know. So, but I'm also very open. And so people knew that they could literally stop by and walk in the house and stick something in the fridge, or call and ask something, or show up. So we've always had that kind of we're in a very small community. And so anyway, so I used group emails, and I authorized and deputized all our friends and neighbors to tell everybody whatever needed to be told.
That's great. That's great. In the chat, the ALS Care Connection has been put up there, and that's a tool that is offered by the ALS Association for exactly that, for supporting the family that has been impacted by ALS with friends and families in the community. So that is something for people to tap into as well. So I'm going to change a little bit, and I'm going to ask, how do you get through the day? How do you, so you get this diagnosis, and as I think a couple of you talked about the plateaus, you kind of dip down, and then you're on a plateau, and then you dip down and you're another plateau. How do you get through the day? So Carol, I'm going to start with you.
So before ALS, I was one that was always looking like, okay, it's almost November. Christmas was already planned and out of my head. But ALS brought me to day by day. You just take it day by day and plan out. Maybe in the beginning it was even hour by hour. In some days it probably was that. But yeah, you just have to take it in chunks. You can't do it in a big sweep, or I couldn't anyway.
That's huge, I think, taking it day by day and taking it one step at a time. Yes, Porter.
I would add to that two things. One is a strategy of like radical acceptance and utter forgiveness, so that you know, building off what Carol said with the day by day and hour by hour, is that, like, you know, sometimes the day doesn't go exactly the way you thought or the way you wanted to, and you're just doing the best you can with the resources available at the time. And there is, you know, no time, and you have no energy for self-recrimination or any regrets. And so I feel like, you know, the practice of being totally present in every moment for Dave was really valuable for both of us. And then just not worrying about the, you know, the things that you might otherwise worry about, and just being like, huh, well, that happened. Anyway, next, and moving on. So I feel like that's it. And the other thing that I would want to say is, you know, the old metaphor of like, put your own oxygen mask on first. And I think this is especially important because, you know, we have broader families. And as I said, our kids are 21 and 23, but they're still our kids. And, you know, they're dad. And the last thing they needed to see is mom falling apart too. And so I endeavored to, you know, do what I needed to do to not completely fall apart. So I maintained my friendships, and I kept riding my horse and walking the dog, and, you know, as Ginny said, reading books. And, you know, so having some time for me. And the last thing that I did for me, which was really hard for us, was I didn't sleep with Dave for the last, you know, 9-10 months, because I really, really had to sleep. And he was loud, and I couldn't do it. And he understood. And he wasn't thrilled about it, but he understood, and I was grateful for that.
Yeah. I mean, really taking care of yourself and bringing down those, I don't know what, I can't remember exactly how you titled it, Porter, but the you know, the jumps that you have to go over, and really taking care of yourself. So thank you for that. So along that same line, you know, how do you maintain the family relationships when caregiving is involved? Ginny, I'm going to start with you.
Well, I don't think we've really, other than the results from COVID, so keeping distances and stuff like that, we really haven't cut off anything. If it wasn't for COVID, his siblings are still over. My mom would still be over. We have an older daughter that lives in Connecticut with the grandkids, and they're still coming up. So we've really still maintained our social life. Maybe not going to the theater or going for walks or going to the beach all the time or whatever. But in terms of keeping in touch with our friends and family, that's something that we haven't ever stopped. And I think that's important.
Have you found it challenging to be the wife and the caregiver?
Some days. Some days it's tough, but
yeah.
No, I think for the most part it's okay. It's okay.
What about you, Carol? How did you manage that caregiver, marriage, family relationship dynamic?
I'm not even sure how to answer that.
Was it hard to be wife and caregiver? And did you find that your role with Dave changed because you were becoming his caregiver?
I tried to be careful about that, because I did find at one point I was just making decisions and not consulting him, or including him, I should say. And I had to pull back and remember that he still had a voice. It was his life. And so, yeah, I did get a little carried away, but reined it in and was able to include him and make it a partnership.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Porter?
Echo what they said. I mean, we did try to, you know, sort of have a date night where, you know, we made a real point of not talking about ALS and not, and is trying to, whether it was just watch a movie or hold hands or something, to do something that was more about coupling. But I think that, the reality is that it certainly does change things, and it's another loss. And that happens. But, it,
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you plan for emergency situations, such as if you, as a primary caregiver, could not provide care? Did any of you have that? Did you plan for that? Yes, Ginny.
These are tough questions,
I
but I
know.
know they're really important, because if I'm down, then what?
Right.
What I did was, we've been blessed. I mean, I had a job where I was able to get long-term care insurance before I retired. And I thank God that we did, because I've been able to get a caregiver service in the house 5 days a week, 3 hours more every morning. So for me, that really works out fantastic. I know that I could get 5.5 hours a day in an instant, so that I know that during the daytime, God forbid something happened to me, he would have that care.
Mm-hmm.
And then my daughter lives with us. Our younger daughter moved in with us so that she can help me with her dad.
Nice.
So I know that come dinner time and through the evening and the night, and even in the morning, she's the one that gets them out of bed in the morning, that I have that in place. I still think it would be challenging, if something happened,
Yeah.
because it's any one of us as wives, we would be probably beside ourselves, not being able to kind of control what's going on, or you know what I mean? It's just our nature as women, I think, to be caregivers.
Right.
And that would be tough not to be able to continue that. But for ourselves, yes, it's planned. And he's got siblings. He's got 4 sisters.
Okay.
And a brother. So we've got people that could step in.
Okay. Great. Porter, do you want to take a stab at that?
We didn't really have an emergency plan. I did have some support and coverage. In the last 4 months or so, we had home health in the morning for 2 or 3 hours, Monday through Friday. And I had a massage therapist come in 2 afternoons a week, who had previously done home care before she was a massage therapist, and she was willing to come to the house. And so she was also capable of, getting him on and off the toilet, or, dressing him, getting him on and off the bed for massage. So, those people were quite capable. But if something had happened where, we had a 24-hour or longer period where I couldn't be there at all, we would have been hard pressed. And I'm glad to say that didn't happen. We did have a couple of circumstances where, like, I had to go pick a kid up at college. And so I was going to be gone for longer than a caregiver's amount of time. And we were able to have friends come so they could be with him. But Dave never would let or would want anyone besides a caregiver professional or me to do anything personal. So, it was fine if it was going to be for a period of time. But if it had been somebody needed to be there to do medications and put him to bed or get him up, there was nobody who ever put him to bed or got him up besides me.
Okay. That must have been a little challenging at times too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Carol, do you want to throw in your comments on this?
Yeah, we didn't have a plan, and then there was a moment when I thought I was going to have surgery, and which would have prohibited me from lifting. So I started to put a plan in place, but then found out I could delay it, so I delayed it.
Nice.
And I'm not sure the plan that we were trying to put together ever would have worked out. But
it's hard. It's hard to put together a plan when you are the caregiver, and your partner relies on you to be there. So So we're at 30. I do want to give a shout out to the attendees. If there's any questions, if anybody wants to pop in a question in the chat, please do so. We can ask while we wait for that. Are there any final thoughts? Porter, I'll start with you.
No, I don't really have any giant parting thoughts, but I hope that people feel like they can reach out to their peers within the foundation. And I'll echo what Ginny said, that I did certainly find the caregiver support group to be a very valuable resource.
Great. Ginny?
I don't
Final
know.
thoughts.
I think a day by day, I think reaching out to the foundation for sure. Maybe if you don't have the monetary ability to purchase things as needed, you know, the loan closet has been a saving grace. And I would just encourage anyone to do that.
Great. And Carol, you get the last word.
Okay, I would say you use your resources. You'd be surprised what's out there if you just look.
Yeah.
So look for whatever question you have.
I want to, and Amber put in the chat, don't forget about the Quality of Life Grant Program that is available through the Northern New England chapter. And I know that that's something that each of the care service coordinators really work with all of the families on. So don't forget about that. So I want to thank all of you, Porter, Carol, Ginny, for participating in this panel discussion. Thank you for your candor and for sharing. And I'm sure that this is going to be very helpful for our attendees. I will say that this is not the end of our conversation. You're invited to join our caregiver groups and programs. So please speak to your care services coordinator and download a full list at the caregiver booth at the expo. And with that, I think we will end our session. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.